Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Civil services aspirants often complain that they are never happy. They have assumed that they will be happy once they see their name in the list, once they will clear this examination. However, there are some days where even these unhappy civil service aspirants are somewhat happy. When is that? When they open a newspaper and to their surprise they find out that there are very few newspaper articles which are relevant for civil services examination. Today is such day in the life of a civil service aspirant. There are very few newspaper articles relevant for your exam today, but we will cover all of them. Now let's get started with the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper, beginning with a news item on page number 1 of the Delhi edition of The Hindu. It talks about allied with PDP to safeguard Jammu and Kashmir's special status. The leader of National Conference, Umar Abdullah, has said that we tried to ally with the PDP to safeguard special status of Jammu and Kashmir. But from the civil services examination, what is it that you need to know? What is this special status of Jammu and Kashmir? And there are two articles that accord somewhat special status to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. One is Article 370 of Indian Constitution. And if you look at the Constitution, it is mentioned that it is a temporary provision for the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And then you have Article 35 capital A. Both these articles have been discussed in detail in our YouTube video. Please search Article 35A and 370 and there is an elaborate analysis of what these two special provisions are all about. In today's newspaper, there is also a very beautiful editorial and we will discuss that editorial under the editorial section. Not consulted on changes in RTI Act, says the Chief Information Commissioner. And this topic is relevant for your governance, wherein we talk about accountability and transparency. Now we have seen that the current government tried to introduce an amendment bill to RTI. And few changes were sought to be made to RTI. But these changes have been resisted by the RTI activists, have been resisted by the opposition political parties. That is why these changes have not been implemented as of now. But what are these changes? Let's have a brief idea about these proposed changes to the RTI Act. Number one, the bill proposes to give Centre the power to decide the tenure as well as the salaries of state and central information commissioners. Critics have warned that these amendments would undermine the independence and authority of the commission. For example, what is the existing structure? Today's structure tells us that the salaries and allowances of these information commissioners, they are at par with election commissioners of Election Commission of India. And their term is for 5 years. That means the salaries and allowances that we pay to election commissioners, the same salary and allowances we pay to the information commissioners. The term for election commissioners, although is 6 years, but for information commissioners, the term was fixed at 5 years. The proposal by the government is that the centre will decide at the time of the notification, when you issue notification for the advertisement of these posts, at that time you will decide, the centre will decide what is going to be the salary, allowance as well as the tenure of these information commissioners. The government has justified these changes on the ground that since Election Commission is a constitutional authority and Information Commission is a statutory authority, that is why there has to be some change, there has to be some disparity between the allowances that we pay to election commissioners and to the information commissioners. But what the civil society activists and RTI activists are saying, that these will undermine the independence and authority of the information commissioners. That is why we should resist them. And now what Mr. Radhakrishna Mathur has said, who is the outgoing Chief Information Commissioner, he's saying that I was not consulted when these changes to the RTI Act were proposed by the government. That is what you need to know from this newspaper article. Relevant to this, let's have a look at some of the possible prelims-based questions that can be asked from this issue. Which of the following is the nodal ministry for RTI matters? Ministry of Information Broadcasting, no. Home Affairs, no. Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, no. It is the Department of Personnel and Training, DOPT. That is the nodal ministry for RTI matters. Now let's look at another important issue on page number 7 of the Delhi edition of the Hindu. Now we have seen that in judiciary there are crores of cases which are pending, and there are a number of reasons why there is such a pendency of cases in our judiciary, not just in Supreme Court but also in high courts and also in the subordinate judiciary. One principal reason is that our judges to population ratio is abysmal. If we look at the current population of India, we would need more than 25,000 extra judges. That means there are number of vacancies that we have to fill, number one. Number two, the number of posts for the judges are also less. That means we have to increase the number of posts in the judiciary. That is how we can solve the pendency of cases in our judiciary. But on top of that, we see other problem. The problem is that our forensic labs are in utter chaos according to the Supreme Court. Why they are in utter chaos? Because of high vacancies. Now where do we need these forensic labs? These forensic laboratories, which are at both center as well as the state levels, they are used to examine very crucial evidence. And this crucial evidence will determine whether an individual is to be awarded life imprisonment or whether he will be awarded capital punishment. Since there are lot many vacancies in these forensic labs, ultimately the cases remain pending in the courts and we are not in a position to impart justice in a speedy manner to the people. That's what Supreme Court has said. Supreme Court has said we are shocked at the utter chaos in these forensic labs because of high vacancies. And these forensic laboratories, you need to know, their role has expanded over a period of time. How? With the emergence of cybercrime, with the emergence of drug-related crimes, these forensic labs have played a very important role, and it is very imperative that these forensic labs work in their full capacities, give quick reports to the judiciary and aid them in discharging their constitutional obligation, which is to impart fair and speedy trial to the people of this country. That is what this newspaper article is all about. Now let's look at an international news on page number 12. It talks about Brexit. Now we have discussed in the past what is this issue about the Brexit. Why Britain wanted to come out of European Union and why the British Prime Minister, even some members of her party, want to oust Theresa May. There were talks that a no confidence motion will be issued and passed against the Prime Minister May because the negotiation that she is carrying out with the European Union does not satisfy the Conservative Party members of her party. But now what this newspaper article talks about is that almost a deal has been reached between the European Union and the United Kingdom, which will determine what is going to be the future of Britain's relationship with the European Union. And it is also going to talk about the wall or the border between the Northern Ireland and the United Kingdom or England. But please wait for a few days. Let's see what the final contours of this deal is all about, and then we will have an elaborate discussion on this negotiation. These are the only newspaper articles that are relevant from your examination point of view. Now let's jump to the editorial section and see which of these editorials are important for your exams. Number 1, unlawful dissolution. We saw yesterday in the Hindu newspaper, when we discussed the analysis of yesterday's newspaper, how the governor of Jammu and Kashmir dissolved the Legislative Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. How there were two competing claims. One by the PDP, Congress and NC Alliance, they staked claim to form the government. The other by People's Conference, supported by the BJP, they also staked claim to form the government. And governor, instead of providing opportunity to either of the two sides, what he did, he dissolved the Legislative Assembly. The Hindu editorial says that this dissolution is unlawful. It goes against the Supreme Court rulings, whether it is in Rameshwar Prasad 2006 judgment or whether it is the initial S.R. Bommai, a landmark judgment of 1994. How? There were two grounds on which the governor of Jammu and Kashmir decided to dissolve Legislative Assembly. One, extensive horse trading, and second, opposing political ideologies of the political parties which staked claim to form the government. How? Governor said that if I would have allowed a floor test where I would have allowed either of the two sides to prove their majority on the floor of the house, then extensive horse trading would have resulted. Money would have exchanged hands and it will have corrupted the democracy in Jammu and Kashmir. That is why I did not want to give either side the chance and opportunity to prove their majority, and instead I dissolved the Legislative Assembly. The second is opposing political ideologies. The governor said PDP and National Conference, they have completely different ideologies. And if they have completely different ideologies and both of these are regional political parties, the government would not have been stable. And if the government would not have been stable because of the opposing political ideologies of the alliance partners, then it is for me to decide that I will dissolve the Legislative Assembly and maybe fresh elections will be called. But both these arguments of the governor are flawed. If we look at extensive horse trading argument presented by the governor, it is not for the governor to deal with extensive horse trading accusations. That is what Hindu editorial talks about. But when we look at opposing political ideologies, in the pre-independent India, Hindu Mahasabha and Muslim League, they were alliance partners in some provinces. They had much more opposing ideologies than what PDP and the National Conference has. That means political ideologies, if they are opposing, is no ground for the governor to have dissolved the Legislative Assembly. The floor test is the only way in which the governor has to satisfy himself about the stability of the government. That is what S.R. Bommai judgment said. In S.R. Bommai, a landmark judgment of the Supreme Court made it abundantly clear that there should be no parading of MLAs, because the governor of Jammu and Kashmir has said that no names were mentioned in the list. Which are these MLAs who are supporting your alliance partner? Which are these members of the Legislative Assembly who are supporting one camp or the other? I don't know the names of these individuals, and you did not parade these MLAs before me so that I could have satisfied myself that these people belong to your camp and you can provide a stable government in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. But in S.R. Bommai judgment, Supreme Court made it clear that parading of MLAs is not required. The floor test is the only way to decide whether the government has the majority or not. So what this editorial talks about, the Jammu and Kashmir governor's action controverts what has been laid down by the Supreme Court. It is an unlawful dissolution. Now let's look at another important column written by Happy Mon Jacob, who teaches at the JNU University in Delhi. And it talks about the nuclear triad. Now let me give you a brief background of what this issue is all about. A nuclear triad is something where you have the potential to use your air support to mount an attack on your enemy. You can use your land to attack your enemy, or you can use the sea or navy. How? India's nuclear doctrine is that we will not use our nuclear weapons initially. We will use our nuclear weapons only when we are attacked. So the nuclear doctrine of India is clear, and that is NFU, no first use doctrine, no first use policy. We will not use nuclear weapons for the first time. We will use them only when we are attacked. Now let's say, for example, there is an enemy country, for example Pakistan. Pakistan attacks the air support that India has. For example, F-16 bombers that India has that can be used to launch nuclear warheads against the enemy country. That entire F-16 bomber base is destroyed by Pakistan. And also our Tatra trucks, for example, just to give you an example, these Tatra trucks are used by the armed forces that they can mount the ballistic missiles on top of these Tatra trucks, and you can fire these nuclear ballistic missiles against your enemy country. But what if both these capabilities are destroyed by the enemy country? Our F-16 bombers, our Tatra trucks, they are destroyed by the enemy. That means in such a scenario, our country's sovereignty will be extinguished. The country can become a slave of any other country. For that, there is very important need that we should have a third alternative. And this third alternative is the submarine. And submarine basically employs stealth technology. That means these submarines are submerged under the water, which makes it very difficult for the enemy country to target these submarines. That means even if a nuclear attack is mounted against India, our F-16 bombers, our Tatra trucks are destroyed. That means now we won't have the potential to mount an air attack or a land-based attack. In that scenario, our entire sovereignty will be compromised. Then we have an alternative. Then we can use these submarines and launch a nuclear missile attack against the enemy country. That means in case there is a first strike where nuclear weapons are used against India, we still have the capability to launch a second strike. We still have the capability to launch a counter attack against the enemy country so that we can safeguard our sovereignty. Now India has completed this triad. How? Recently INS Arihant, it conducted an inaugural sea patrol, and now using INS Arihant, which is a nuclear submarine, what it can do, we can launch nuclear missiles from our submarines onto an enemy company, and our nuclear triad has been completed. But what this column talks about, it says that there are some missing links in Arihant. For example, the missiles that were used in this sea patrol of INS Arihant, many people say that the range of these missiles is only 750 kilometer. When it is only 750 kilometer, that means these missiles can neither reach China nor these missiles can reach Pakistan. So what is the capability? What is the worth of this INS Arihant? We don't know. Because if 750 is the range of these missiles which you can mount on this submarine, that means to launch an effective strike against Pakistan, you have to reach closer to the waters near Pakistan. That would render our INS Arihant susceptible. That would render our INS Arihant within the striking distance of the attack by Pakistan as well. So in order to make INS Arihant more effective, what we need to do? We need to employ and develop K4 missile, which have the range of more than 3,500 kilometers, so that we can launch them against China or Pakistan whenever there is a need. Second thing what Happy Mon Jacob talks about is impact on strategic stability. Now what is going to be the impact of this sea patrol of INS Arihant? There is a common concept in diplomacy that what a state does to secure itself could end up making it more insecure. If India has developed this nuclear triad, has successfully conducted the sea patrol of INS Arihant, then it would speed up competition in our neighborhood. Pakistan, what it will do, it would speed up its submarine building exercise with the assistance from China. China would also build up its naval presence. China would also take more emphasis into the Belt and Road Initiative and the Maritime Silk Road. And ultimately what India has done, India has tried to secure itself by successfully implementing a nuclear triad. But what it might do, the unintended consequence of this exercise is that it will speed up the competence or the competing strategic ability and capabilities of our neighbors. That is what Happy Mon Jacob talks about. And the third important thing is the command and control. If you know, if using an air force we have to launch a nuclear attack, or using army we have to launch a nuclear attack, the permission has to come from the prime minister, because prime minister controls the nuclear button of this country. And when prime minister gives his okay, ultimately it is going to be the civilian administration which will supply these missiles to navy and the army. And Baba Atomic Research Center will facilitate the transfer of these missiles to the army and the air force, and then nuclear attack can be mounted. But what Happy Mon Jacob talks about, he says, so far as this INS Arihant is concerned, this warhead would be pre-mated with the canistered missiles in this INS Arihant. That means there will be no civilian control. No civilian will be on board of this INS Arihant. That means there is every possibility that nuclear attack can be wrongly mounted against the enemy country without any civilian control. And unless and until this problem is resolved, then INS Arihant would not meet the objectives it is set for. That is what Happy Mon Jacob talks about. So there are three subheads to this discussion on INS Arihant. Number one, INS Arihant's missing links. What is it that we need to do for that? We have to utilize K4 missile systems on top of INS Arihant, which have the range of more than 3,500 kilometers. Then we will be at the striking distance of launching an attack against China or Pakistan. Second, what is going to be the impact on strategic stability because of this inaugural sea patrol of INS Arihant? It will speed up the nuclear submarine capability of China as well as Pakistan. And third, the command and control issues need to be resolved, because if civilian administration is involved in the nuclear attack carried out through army and the air force, we need to ensure that when a nuclear attack is to be mounted on any country, there is going to be a civilian response as well. There is going to be civilian coordination as well. There should not be an unauthorized nuclear attack carried out through INS Arihant. That is what this column is all about. Now let's look at another column on Ayushman Bharat, Get the Model Right, written by Amerike Narayan and Kavya Narayan. Now on Ayushman Bharat, we have an elaborate video on our YouTube channel. Please go through that video and all the doubts regarding Ayushman Bharat will be cleared. But very briefly, what this column talks about, it basically attacks the insurance model. It says insurance model is not the best way to provide universal health coverage to the citizens of this country. We have seen recently under Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, more than 17% of the farmers have decided not to re-register themselves under this Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Why? Because they get delayed compensation. They get inadequate compensation. These are some of the problems with Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. That means if Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana has not been in a position to satisfy an Indian farmer and he is opting out of this insurance scheme, on top of that, what we have seen these are the insurance companies which are benefiting under this program. Reliance Insurance, other insurance companies, they have pocketed huge profits under Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. So insurance model is not the best way to provide health coverage or farmer subsidies or farmer assistance in this country. That is what this column talks about. This column also raises one important issue. Let's say, for example, there is this government and these are the citizens. Government wants to insure these citizens. How government does that? Government approaches the insurance company. But insurance company has to ask for a premium. And that premium is provided by the government. But how is this premium decided and determined by the insurance company? Insurance company looks at the profile of these customers. When insurance company looks at the profile of these customers, then they have to tailor made the products or suitable insurance products for their customers. They also have to factor in some risks. For example, if there are 10,000 citizens who are insured by an insurance company A, the insurance company A has also to keep in mind, what if tomorrow at a single point in time all these 10,000 people will claim reimbursement, will claim the insurance. That means they hedge these risks in such a manner that they calculate the premium at an additional level. That means the premium cost will go up. These two individuals who write this column, they say this is not a problem when we talk about Ayushman Bharat. That means for Ayushman Bharat, the insurance company need not identify the customer because these customers are already identified by the government. On top of that, these insurance companies also take into account their advertising and marketing costs to fix a premium. That means premium is fixed at a high rate by these insurance companies and ultimately government is at a loss. Instead, the government should use its jam trinity, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana account, Aadhaar and mobile number. This jam trinity should be used so that directly the government should provide the benefit, the health cover, the universal health coverage to the people without involving the insurance companies, because such insurance models are beneficial only for the insurance companies, not to the farmers or the people. On top of that, there is an opportunity cost. What is the opportunity cost? This premium that government has to pay to the insurance companies, this premium is paid by the government in the beginning of the year. That means loss of interest will take place, interest money will be lost out on the government, and that loss, what is called opportunity cost, that amounts to close to 2000 crore a year. So the government should rethink the insurance model of providing health coverage to the individual citizens and for the farmers as well. Now let us have a look at some of the prelims based questions. From today's newspaper, which of the following statements are correct? The chapter states, under the Constitution of India does not apply to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The statement is correct, because under the constitutional scheme of things, it is Article 1 and Article 370 that apply to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. After that, many other articles were extended to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. But when we look at the states chapter under the Constitution, it clearly says that this phrase state does not include the state of Jammu and Kashmir. National emergency on the grounds of armed rebellion cannot be extended to Jammu and Kashmir. Correct. National emergency can be extended to Jammu and Kashmir only on the grounds of war or external aggression, not on the grounds of armed rebellion. Fundamental duties are applicable to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. This statement is wrong because fundamental duties are not applicable to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So only 1 and 2, B is the correct answer. The North Sentinel Island is closer to B, South Andaman. And here is the explanation to that. If you want to see gharials in their natural habitat, which one of the following is the best place to visit? Previous year's prelims based question 2017. It's the Chambal River. Now let's look at a mains based question. Answer should be in less than 150 words. There is no principle underpinning the death penalty in India today except vengeance. Justify. So you will have to justify that capital punishment has no place in India. The hideous truth is this: judicial executions in India have all the rationality of a roulette table. In 2013, Supreme Court commuted the death penalty given to Maninder Singh for killing both his daughter and wife. This while out of prison on parole, where he was serving time for earlier raping the girl. And this case we discussed in our yesterday's Hindu newspaper analysis. The judges argued that death penalty ought only be considered when a perpetrator posed a menace and threat to the harmonious and peaceful coexistence of the society. 1 week later, the Supreme Court upheld death sentence for Sundarajan, who kidnapped and then killed a 7-year-old boy. The judges noted, among other things, that the agony for parents for the loss of their male child who would have carried further the family lineage. Besides the obvious imprint of gender values on judicial reasoning, it is the arbitrariness of outcome in cases that are similar which tells us something is seriously wrong. That means if two cases are slightly similar, but in one case the court is awarding capital punishment, in other case the court is awarding life imprisonment, that means there is no hard and fast rule to decide which are these rarest of the rare cases. For example, the former Chief Justice of India, Justice P.N. Bhagwati, said, "What is this rarest of the rare doctrine?" Does that mean that the judges will decide what is the rarest of the rare doctrine? Yes, because there is no definition of what constitutes rarest of the rare case. So Justice P.N. Bhagwati asked, were I to live or die depending upon how benches are constituted in the Supreme Court? If my case would go to a Judge A, he may award me capital punishment. But if my case would go to a Judge B, he may award me life imprisonment. Am I to live or die depending upon which judge is hearing my case? Is that not violative of the fundamental right to equality under Article 14? Is that not violative of Article 21? And under Article 21, not only do I have the right to life and personal liberty, I also have an inferred right called right to fair trial. So this capital punishment in India has all the ingredients of a roulette table. The Supreme Court has itself admitted on at least one occasion that many of those on death row are there because of erroneous legal precedents set by itself. For example, in 2009, what Supreme Court said? Supreme Court said in Santosh Kumar Bariyar versus State of Maharashtra that previous 12 capital punishments which we awarded, these 12 capital punishments or death sentences were awarded wrongly. That means we misinterpreted the guidelines and we awarded capital punishment to 12 individuals. Out of these 12 individuals, 2 were already hanged. That means the logical argument against capital punishment should be it is irrevocable. If I was wrongly sentenced to life imprisonment, after 5 years the court can prove that no, you were wrongly imprisoned, then I will be set free. But what if I was already hanged? That means the only logical argument or the most logical argument against capital punishment is its irrevocability. Once it is imposed, we cannot revoke it back because the dead cannot be given life back. Yet both judiciary and the government have been reluctant to announce a moratorium on executions until a thoroughgoing review is carried out. This ought not to surprise us. In case after case, the course of criminal justice has been shaped by public anger and special interest lobbying, because it is the people, it is the public anger that is forcing the judiciary to either award capital punishment or award life imprisonment. When Nirbhaya was gang raped, the public opinion was such that all those 5 individuals were awarded capital punishment. When Parliament was attacked in 2001, the public sentiment was such that Afzal Guru, the perpetrator of that crime, was awarded capital punishment by the judiciary. That means capital punishments in India are determined by public sentiment and special interest lobbying. Indians must remember the foundational principle of our republic, the guardian of all our rights and freedoms, isn't popular sentiment, it is justice. Which in turn, that means this justice is in turn based on consistent application of principles. There is no principle underpinning the death penalty in India today except vengeance. And vengeance is no principle at all. That is how your answer should look like. That is it for now from our newspaper analysis. And if you're liking our initiatives, please like, comment and subscribe. Thank you for being with us. Have a great day.